So we're going to get started in just a second here. I'm always a huge, difficult mess for the AV crowd because I'm switching and demoing and switching and so it's my fault that we're starting just a few minutes late here. Let me just get a little crowd demographic. Who was here at the CTCon Roadshow in October? And oh crap, I have to do a different lecture now. Okay. All right, baby guy? Okay, no, great. And who, so that was most of you. Who is, of the people who were not here in October, who is a student animator or learning and breaking into the industry? Raise your hand, okay. And who that wasn't here, again, is already working and is just here to heckle me and make fun. Okay, great. Fantastic. Cool. So we're just going to get started in a second here. Let me tell you about just briefly about both lectures. One is a lecture on animating contact, which seems like a pretty focused in demo, but it's actually pretty broad once you get the hang of it, once you get the mental change. How's the volume, by the way? Is that good? It's fine. Once you make the mental change that I'm asking you to, it's actually broadly applicable to almost all areas of animation. So we'll start with contact, but my favorite in the creme de la creme, who's that handsome guy? My favorite is the secondary action lecture, because it will basically inform all of your decisions when doing performance work from now on, which is pretty powerful. Okay, so I'm very excited to get to that one, but we gotta chew the fat before we get to the good stuff. So we're gonna start with the contact demo, and then we'll make it. I promise. This is weird. Like I was looking at this board, and there's some like pretty lewd stuff written on this. I was looking at an angle, and they didn't erase it all the way. So whoever's rose that is, thank you for that. Let's have a round of applause for the rose. Thank you. Man, I'm glad I didn't draw that. For that round of applause, my lord. No, we'll get up to speed. Okay, so animating good contact. Okay. So, what are we going to, let's see if this works. Hello? Yes. And you see that? And you see Autodesk licensing. I'm just going to try. Just trying to look like I know what I'm doing. Okay. So, what are we going to examine? Contact is an issue that is very prevalent in animation. Most of the time, especially like who works in games, like who here is like from like Ubisoft or one of the other game studios around here. Yeah, like games especially, there's so much contact going on, and it's really good to know how to deal with contact. I know there's some special considerations when you're talking about the game world in terms of contact, in that you have to worry about things like bounding boxes and things like that. But it definitely applies from the artistic and the visual standpoint. Okay, so it's extremely prevalent in animation. Contact is, but really this lecture is more about loosening up than it is actually going to like pound some new rules that you've never heard down your throat. It's really actually about just like taking a deep breath and approaching your moments of contact in animation with a little bit more of a relaxed approach, but an informed approach. Okay, and you want to start learning to rely on the viewer. Okay, because good character and good prop interaction actually allows the viewer to take on a little bit of the work in terms of selling the motion. Okay, so I'm going to try to make it so that you're focusing on something other than what you're normally focusing on just inherently with your pose-to-pose workflow, or even your straight-ahead workflow, and actually try to rely on the viewer just a little bit more. Okay, and the idea behind contact, like I said, is applicable in a lot of places, in a lot of areas of animation. Okay, so let's, actually, you know what? Don't normally do this, but I'm just going to give you guys the secret to perfect animation right now. Go ahead and just copy that down. And, okay, that should have been enough time. Cool. So there you have it. We can all go now. Common mistakes. This is the real quick run through of how normally character animators, just when you're intuitively going through the process and you've taught yourself how you go about keying contact. Normally what happens is there's a pose-to-pose workflow, so let's say it's like a punch. The character does their anticipation, their nice action, and then there's a keyframe, bless you up front, there's a keyframe where that contact happens, and both the pose of the character that's doing the action and the pose of the character that's being hit it is posed explicitly on that keyframe, and then you have your follow-through or whatever, so you have the resulting mayhem and ballistics from that contact. All right, the main problem with that is that bad contact, bad. Most common mistake is you're keying the contact explicitly, and the reason that is kind of, I'm going to get a little philosophical here. The reason that that's bad is that the contact is not really like a moment in the universe that was expected, if that makes sense. Whenever you're working, you need to know that when you're laying down keyframes, you're inherently just creating kind of a moment that like the universe like is aware of. I'm not sure if that makes any sense. Does anyone know what I'm talking about when I say that? It's kind of like, I put a keyframe right here on all my body controllers, and it's almost like when you're polishing, when you're moving forward with your workflow, when you're making this animation look good, it's like you need to know, okay, well I have all these keys that are in the same frame right here. Now I have to break them up. Now I need to, make this look a little bit more organic and whatever. So this is the moment that the contact is being kind of treated like something that it really isn't with most animators. When you're starting out, I'm kind of having a problem like walking by this little thing each time. Stand by. Hold tight. Look at a little ice bucket with water. It's like a hotel. How fancy! Look at this giant bottle of water. It's like they expect me to be like Andre the Giant or something. Who could drink this much water? Actually, I'm gonna make it a goal. I'm gonna drink this whole thing by the time we're done. How does that sound? First scheduled pee break, 20 minutes. Okay. So the problems with that common mistake is there's three main problems. First is that the speed of the contact is kind of changed and altered for that explicitly keyed pose. All right, I'll explain all of these a little bit more as we go into it. Arcs, most importantly. The arcs of animation, everything moves on arcs. And when you're keying your animation, what the problem at the moment of contact is if you go into an arc that is like biased towards that moment of contact. Let's say it's putting their hands down on a table. If it's biased towards that moment of contact, it all is way too nice to that moment. Whereas what's actually going to happen is if I'm going to put my hand down on this table and I'm going to do a nice, arc on my hand, I'm just going to do something like that, where my body is all moving on an arc, and that moment is kind of interrupting. So it's not like you're going to put that arc explicitly into that contact. So arcs is going to be the one that we focus on the most with this lecture, with this little talk. And then twinning, of course. So as you can see over here on this board, actually red was the worst color to use. You can't see that for crap. Let me go over this with black real quick, just because. So I flew in yesterday, and when I was here in March, someone told me that Montreal has 2 seasons, winter and August. And it was actually really nice today. So what's the deal? That person must not have wanted me to come back or something. I don't know why. Okay. So first thing let's talk about is the speed. Okay. The frame rate debate. Okay, the camera only captures 24 frames per second, and what we really actually should be doing is kind of honoring the fact that we're working sort of in a medium that is born of film, right? So even if you're working in video games, and you know your engine can do 60 frames a second in HD or whatever, you should still take this into consideration. So the game people, this applies to you as well, but more for the visual effects people and people working in like TV or film. Okay, so shutter is closed longer than it's open per frame. So I'm not sure if this is a very dumbed down example of what I'm talking about, but let's say that 24 frames per second. Let's say this is a frame. These are all frames. Your shutter might be open like a 250th of a second. So here's 24. I'm sorry. Here's 1 frame, and these are 2 frames. So your shutter will actually open, like that. So what you're actually seeing on each frame and your eye is blending together is much less than you're actually getting. So the speed problem is that if you watch a film or if you watch TV and you see fast movement and fast contact, you never actually see the moment of contact. It's very, very rare. And so the problem with speed is that, let's say you're animating a walk. The walk is going to have the exact, like cycles, are going to have the exact same pose on some of the exact same frames. It's like every integer frame, we get that picture of the foot, with the heel perfectly, you couldn't even slip a piece of paper under there, and like the foot upwards like that, and then them rolling onto it. And I understand that that's kind of unavoidable with some of the cycle work that a lot of you do, but it just is interesting that when we're doing cycles, that we're so okay with burning these images over and over and over into people's minds. Does this flip over? No. I'm glad I didn't really try to flip it over. That would be funny. Okay, so that pose where the character is just about to place their foot on the ground, like that is coming like every 10 frames or so. So when you're animating like a walk cycle, for instance, it's just interesting to extrapolate the problems of speed with the frame rate debate. So if you look at the problem from the other side, many of the things that you're probably doing already, you're actually keen to imply the movement. Okay? So, like for instance, what's a good example? Like when you guys like animate someone like jumping off of a building and landing, the reason that the person's arc does what it does is because your character is jumping onto the ground doesn't move, right? So basically, that's a contact of a very light object, comparatively, a human body, and an immovable object, which is the ground. So every single time you animate someone, even walking or running, but especially when you guys like animate someone like jumping off of a building and like landing and rolling, all that arc work you're doing, you're not thinking about it in terms of the contact of two objects, because the ground doesn't feel like an object, but it is. And you actually are implying a lot of the the methods here naturally, okay? But we're going to loosen up, okay? Because normally we're just a little bit too rigid when we pose contact, okay? So my question is why if our eyes will blend it together, like I said, rely on the audience a little bit, and not in games so much, but like film and TV, the shutter is open on integer frames, is basically like a digital kind of world, and motion is organic and analog, right, and natural. Why are we keying it all on the same frame? Okay, so here's a solution. Okay, this slide is not a joke slide. The perfect animation slide. I'm actually going to give you time to write this one down. Contact should be animated using change in arcs as your guide. Okay? With proper weight, proper force, proper treatment of frame intervals and time. Okay? Is there no one? No? Okay. I know my own presentation. I was practicing it on the plane, and the stewardess came over and it was time to fill out those little cards, like, you know, like, do you have any meat or insects, you know, in your bag? And I had meat, but I said, I don't know if I have insects. It depends on how long we're going to be in the air. She didn't think it was funny either. Proper weight, proper force, proper treatment of frame intervals and time. And really, the arcs is all the information that you'll ever need. Okay? So let's just take the example of like a character jumping off of a building, right? And then like landing and rolling. Like in your composition, your character is going to have this nice parabolic arc on their body, right? And then they're going to land and probably like do a roll and then stand up, for instance. Okay? So when you're posing out this animated scene, what you're probably, again, not realizing is that the ground is an object that pushes back. Okay? So we're going to try to key all contact the way you would when you're keying like full body actions in the real world, in the big bad world out there. Okay, so real quickly, straight ahead versus pose to pose. Okay, both methods have basically the opposite problems and like pros and cons that they introduce to the contact workflow. Okay, the problem with straight ahead, of course, is that you lose that really nice, you know, silhouettes, those fantastic, you know, iconic poses, because, you know, if you're animating something straight ahead, like you'll like just never get there. It's, you know, pose method is best used to get those really nice strong silhouettes and those iconic poses, etc. And so pose obviously is the opposite, right? So you get those iconic, you know, beautiful strong poses and those nice silhouettes, but if you key your contact using pose to pose, you have that thing again where you just like your arc is just like really, really biased towards that moment instead of something a little bit more natural like that. Okay, so the solution is to use a hybrid basically and key pose to pose, and then oops, oh no. Key pose to pose, and then at that moment of contact, actually go back and use a straight ahead method to correct the arcs. Okay, so we're going to do a little shot, pressing a button. Very, very, very simple, just a hand pressing a button. Okay, first thing we're going to examine the mechanics. Let's think about this. It's a button. It's a big button. It's got a lot of give. It's got like an inch of give because I want it to, you know, be kind of smushy, right? The hand, very, very, very like heavy object comparative to the button. But the button moving is almost going to be like pose change. So we're not going to consider the button being the object. We're going to consider the wall or the button when it's at its when it's totally pressed in, it stops as the object that the hand's pressing against. So very, very light, very, very heavy. Probably the change in arc is going to be very, very minimal, and the pose change in the finger, just probably a little bit of, finger bend like that. Now, remember, change in arcs, what it means is that the heavier object is going to have, the greater influence on the arc. Okay? So if you have, all right, let's take this example. All right? Now you have, anyone see the film Sherlock Holmes, the new one? You know what I'm talking about, where there's the building, and then there's the water right here, and they were in a boat. Okay? So if you have a person, hey, okay, and they jump off of a building and land in the boat, what's heavier? The boat is, right? Because the boat, even like a simple rowboat can displace like 500 pounds, right? So this person who weighs 180 pounds or 72 kilos. Is that right? Someone do the math. Let me know how I did. That person's going to land, and the boat is going to, basically go down a little bit, but then it'll basically come back and forth and settle, right? So the person took on the arc of the boat, basically, right? So we're starting to think about this just in terms of vectors and arcs combining. Whereas, this is my drawing of an elephant. Most people will tell you, like, oh, I can draw better if I try. I'm not going to tell you that. You have an elephant, right, that weighs like 6 tons, jump off. Basically, what's this arc going to look like? It's going to go straight through. I mean, the boat's not even going to have a chance. It might slow it down a little bit, right, but that you can just do. Here's the spacing of this, right? Something like that, where you space it like this. But the arc is not going to have much trouble staying on point. So let's really quickly run through this little example right here using Autodesk Maya 2011, which I've never seen. Essential skills movies. All right, I think I should probably learn about zooming and panning. Actually, no, we don't have time. Okay. Is that not how you get rid of tabs anymore? Okay. All right. Is that a good color, or did you prefer the gradient? Probably prefer the gradient. Everything, when it gets older, it gets darker. It's like, ooh, look at our new interface. Oh my God, it's darker. Yes, it is. Autodesk. I actually missed, what the heck, man? I actually missed Autodesk getting Softimage. Like, I'm way behind the times. What stupid is my thing? J. Oh my God, J. So that's crazy. So there's like nothing they don't own now. I heard Autodesk was going to buy a dairy farm, but I'm going to wait to get cream cheese 2011 until they iron out the bugs. There we go. Button push. Say changes? No. But it's a masterpiece. I know. I'm going to be putting. I'm recording this. That's what that clapping was. I was just syncing this little mic down here with the camera in the back. We were recording this and selling it off my blog, and it would be like super discounted to the people who were here. And like afterwards, I'll just put a little sign-up sheet where you can put your email down if you want to be emailed when I finish editing it. But as part of that, you'll get all the shots and like for the secondary demo, you'll get all the examples we come up with as well. So, oops, that was the wrong thing. That was the wrong thing. Sorry. Not sure if this is going to work. I can't handle this dialogue. Anyone know how to change the dialogue back to the Windows dialogue? Is that it? Yeah. No. No. Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if this works. So this is Bloke. Bloke's a free rig you can get on creativecrash.com, formerly High End. You can still go to High End and it'll take you to Creative Crash. And so my scenes will have the animation, and you'll have to download the Bloke to reference in on your own because I can't include that with the files. Okay, so again, we have this little scene set up, and this is normally a keyframe for some animators. So they set a key right here, right? Auto key on. Auto key the news. Auto key the news. Right? You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so you anticipate, and then there's this moment where like the molecules. In fact, this is not good enough. It's like. Wait, I still see some light. Oh yeah. Oh wait. See that down there is perfect. It's like the molecules. It's like you're splitting atoms right here. And then, you have the button push, and then, something like this. Okay. The problem with this is that you are not taking into consideration basically the correct arc. So what we're just going to do is we're going to edit this just a little bit, and actually the only thing we do is just going to delete this one key where that contact is, and then just work on the arc of the finger. Okay, so let's anticipate it just like a little bit more and have it go in a little bit straighter. And come out straighter. Okay? Okay. And now, it's common when you're doing it this method that there is a keyframe instead of what is normal, which is perfect. Okay. Where there's a keyframe here, and then a keyframe where you pose the entire action with like can't even slip a piece of paper through there. And then the actual pushing, like a keyframe here. It's normal when you're just keying it on with arcs, all right, and getting the pose you want. It's normal for there to be a keyframe here. A keyframe before, obviously, somewhere on your arc, and then the keyframe right before the contact, and then the keyframe after the contact is there's contact happen, and both objects have moved, and your pose change is beginning to happen. Another thing I want to start talking about is the pose change. And the pose change is really important because your pose change is one of those things that is normally, it starts getting twinned when you do all of that action on the same frame. Picking up a glass, we're going to do a shot really quick about picking up a glass. And the pose change on picking up a glass, again, is a big problem because if you key that pose, with that hand perfectly around the glass, students and even professionals alike like that pose to be perfect, going in there and really examining the pose, making sure everything is just barely touching it, and making sure that pose is right on. But then sometimes what we forget to do is when we key that entire pose, that glass is just sitting still. So you have that arc going in, and that hand just that gorgeous pose, and then picking up. How many times have you handed something to someone, here, take this, and they're like this. And not only were they doing that, but they weren't touching it at all, until that instant when their fingers touched it, and then when it did, it was moving. That'd be really, really weird, wouldn't it? Hey, take it. What are you doing? I just like to see that. I like to I like to live a day all the animation cliches, just see if someone can pick up on it, like bad walk cycle, way too forward on my on my weight or something like that. See if only dorks laugh at it. 'Cause we know what we are. Okay, so this is very, very, very simple. Okay, we got a little bit of that anticipation going in. Then we have the hand controller. We've got just the nicest little, booty dooty dooty. So, and it's common that there's going to be a key where there's nothing, no contact, and the key after where there is. So let's just start the pose change. Okay, flatten it out, and then let's go back. Like I said, you key it pose to pose, and then you go back straight ahead, and fix it. And this is when you can get that. No. Yes. Okay, and this is when you can start getting, how you all love to get, which is, super picky with this, with this distancing. I don't know why, but this reminds me of, what's that thing? Hold on a second, I'll get it. I know, I need water. I'm going so slow. I need to pick up the pace. Hold on a second. Go. That wasn't smart. I heard someone died like that. I think it's going to be me. I just totally diluted my electrolytes. Anyone have like a Tic Tac? I'll get one at the break. Okay, so here we go. Just the brand new contact is probably playing. There we go. No, not play reframe. I changed it. I changed it on purpose. Okay. Okay. And now, obviously, that stupid finger pose has to fix itself right at the end. I'm really feeling bad from that water. Why didn't you stop me? Settle. And I'm just going to do a little bit of, whoa, jeez, man, crazy. Nice to see my old control still work. Just going to do a little bit of arc smoothing on this. This goes straight, right? What my translate's doing. Oh, just a little bit. Okay. Finger kind of looks like a wet noodle. Okay, so obviously, this is not the final version, but the point is that we took an approach where we made the pose what we wanted it to be on the hand, and when it contacted, we just went straight forward, use a straight ahead approach to make that contact not be, not interrupt what we were trying to accomplish with the hand and the finger. Okay, so same thing. So let's move forward. We determine the arcs. We determine the pose change. This is old news. Both objects have pose change. Basically, the fingertip is the pose change. The button being pushed is basically the pose change for the button. Okay, pose it out, and then animate the contact straight ahead. Remember the wrong way? Remember to have a key right there? No good, no good. Or that creepy friend that you have that grabs the cup all slowly. We don't want to be that guy. I don't know why I did this before, but this is brilliant. I can see what slide is up right here if I just use it. Okay, so let's take a look at arc a little bit closer. Okay, we know that everything moves on arcs Okay, and arcs are basically the way that forces are exerted from our body, right? So it has a lot to do with the fact that your body is basically joints, and they all can actually be described by rotation, right? So you put a force on a joint, like a ball joint, like your shoulder, and that force is eventually going to reach its limit, and it's going to move in an arc. It's not the only reason that we move on arcs, but it does have a lot to do with the fact that we have forces in our body that are just playing themselves out naturally and organically. Okay, so forces can be described by vectors. Let's go into just a little bit of, I think this is trigonometry, I'm not sure though. I'm not sure if you guys remember the good old 3, 4, 5 triangle. Do you remember that? Right, do you remember this triangle from trigonometry? Right, well this is basically how vectors work, all right? If you have a wind blowing this way at 4 newtons, right, and exerting that kind of force that way, and then a wind blowing this way exerting a force of 3 newtons, the combined vector, right, will be that. Okay, so just imagine you have a golf ball, okay, rolling this way, and a baseball whatever, you try to draw one, okay. Rolling this way, right? If you just imagine the combined vectors of what they are going to, the force that they're going to exert when they hit each other, boom and boom, then you can realize that there is going to be, because of this is really, really close. In the grand scheme of things, this is very, very, very close. But you're going to get the resulting vector. So everything moving in arcs has more to do with the fact that the forces are combining in contact than it does with almost anything else. Okay? So the combining of the vectors is enough to telegraph the weight of the moment of contact. Right? So this is very, very simple. This is probably very intuitive for most of you. All right? Let's say you have a ball on a string, okay, and it's swinging, okay, in an arc, right? If it hits a empty, like a ring box, ding, but it's empty. No one's getting married today. What's going to happen, right? So this arc is going to boom, it's going to hit it, but it's probably going to bounce a little bit and have a little bit of play in the rope, a little bit of slack in the rope, but then it's going to fall downwards from gravity, which is, it's just a force, negative 9.8, that force downwards. And then it's going to come to the end of its rope again, ding, and then the arc is going to just go back and forth, right? And then the box is going to be hit a certain distance. The pose change on the box can be described by the box being tilted up, and then it's going to fast in back to its pose down here, and then slide, right? But what if this was brick instead? It hit a brick. So all you need to actually telegraph, and this is the second moment when we're talking about letting the audience do a lot of the work for you, is letting them actually take on the work of combining the vectors in their mind and letting the arcs tell them what exactly is going on. Okay? Yikes. I don't know about this dialogue. Although I do like the file options being right there. That is good. All right, Autodesk, we can work together. All right, so button push. Let's say that. Now let's open pendulum. Okay, so here's a pendulum coming to. Ooh, that first arc was pretty bad. Ugh. Right. Anyway, so here's a pendulum, and it's just coming to rest, right? So you know that the only resistance that's happening right now is basically gravity pulling it straight down. That's why it doesn't want to go up, right? So it's just coming to rest. So in the scene that I just described, where the pendulum hits a box, all you need to see is the change in the arc of the pendulum to see that it was, before it hit it was going to come up to like right here, like almost the same. It's very elastic in the beginning, but it only comes up that far, right? And then again, let's frame through this. Here's the frame before, here's the frame after. So it's very common when you're doing it just on arcs, because all I did was I baked the channel. I cheated a little bit. I baked the channel on this and got and got the whole arc, and it was obviously just back and forth. It was just straight, and then all I had to do was put the box here, frame through it. When the pendulum went through the box, I'm like, oh, contact already happened. Let's pose it out correctly. So then it went straight ahead. There's the pose change I'm talking about on the box being tilted up, and then the box fasts. Remember to fast in on the box tilting back down on the ground, and so then you get something that looks pretty natural. Right? One more time. So it feels pretty natural when you do it that way. Okay. So let's do the other shot. Okay. Pick up the glass. Remember to pose the arc. The hand is heavier. Let the hand pose change account for some of the arc and composition. What that means is that my hand is going to be moving forward, but it's going to be doing a pose change, grabbing the glass. And what that means is that I'm going to have this sort of counter-posing happening in composition, hand moving forward, but fingers moving backwards. So that will account for a lot of the compositional feeling of the change in the arc on the hand. And then key the contact straight ahead. Okay, so let's do that. Let's get up to that. Let's pick it up. Anyone watch Archer? The animation? It's hilarious. I love it. I love what's the female agent's name? I can't remember her name, but she always whenever she does something, or Archer asks her, "Are you really gonna do that?" She goes, "Yup." So I've started that. It's a bad habit. I think I'm getting high off the water. I think I had too much just now. What are we doing? What are we doing with our lives? Looking for the rigs. I'm sorry. I'm trying to multitask. I'm trying to do more than one thing at once, which I obviously can't. Okay, so we got our little scene set up. Okay, here's Bloke. He feels like me after that water, but he's going for some more. Okay. And so let's just do what we set out to do. Okay. So let's anticipate it just a little bit. Just roll it up. On pull vectors, just a little hint. I like to do what I call flying the pull vectors, which is just take them out really far and bring them in and pose them straight ahead. After, when they start giving you crap. But if they're so close like this, you're going to run into a lot more problems. So I just throw them out here. I call it flying the PVs, and then they just calms everything down. So it's just one little tip. That's why I'm putting them all the way over there. Where are you going with that? So just anticipate that a little bit. Wait, auto cues on. Stand by. now let's just key the arc. What? Undo? What? What? Autodesk? What the heck? Whoa. Okay. What? Wait a second. I think I know what's happening. I am going crazy from the water. Hold on a second. Table. Visibility on. Oh, it's like templating it for some reason. Huh. Let me do this. Create a new. Oh, okay. Okay, it's probably graphics card. It's not Autodesk. See, this is why I'm waiting to get Cream Cheese 2011. You don't have a bagel incident. All right, so anticipate. We're going to just key the arc. Now, look at my default tangent type. This is feeling kind of flat, isn't it? Okay, so okay. Oops. Save layouts. No. Layouts. Split top. Okay. Alright, so we can just price line that and get what we need. Okay. Oh no! It's weird that it's only this one. Huh? Huh. Think if I submit a bug report? No, I'll know. I'll submit the bug report and then I'll use like the video as proof. Like, really? It worked. Although, then again, I do like their products and I probably don't want to get on any lists. Like bad lists. I want to get on all the good lists. Like you guys, I'm supposed to remind you that you can get free versions of Autodesk software just by joining the educational community. Not the editorial community. You can join that one too, but the education community. That's fantastic. You really ought to all take advantage of that because it's like the full version of the software and everything. All right, so what I'm just trying to do is I'm trying to get just the arc. I'm just trying to get that arc working for me. So I just made a little motion trail right there, and that's a good way sometimes to just see what your arc looks like and fix little problems. Of course, they do update kind of slowly when you do it with like a rig. So anyway, let's say I'm happy with this arc, which I am. Who wouldn't be? Just going to retime it just a little bit. Oops. Do not make retiming choices in the graph editor with a motion trail showing. Where is it? You guys use motion trails? They're really nice. Although, who uses Maya in here? Who uses Max? Okay. Fantastic. All right. So let's key the pose change. We're flying through this. We have to. So, but let's just key it real quick. It's going to open up in anticipation. Maybe not that much. All right, let's whatever. And now let's get it on. Okay. This what? Not my chosen window. I thought I could depend on you. Okay. Oh. Yeah. What? Which one of you is going to behave? Okay. You, but every single time I full screen this one, it goes bad. So I'm going to go to this one. Ha! What? Okay. I'm going to just create a... Let's try a camera. Sometimes cameras are nicer. No, they're not. All right, you know what I think I need to do? Are you interested? Huh. All right, I'm just going to try to do the rest of it. There we go. For a second. Oops. Stand by. We're going to do a little ninja catalyst. Oh, there's your problem. ATI. We're going to do performance. All settings. Oops, not defaults. No, apply. Did that reunite my screens? No. All right, stand by. I'm just going to save the scene real quick, guys, and maybe we'll maybe when we come back, reload my after I reunite this one more time. All settings. Anything else I can turn off? Okay, I guess not. I don't know if that does anything. I'm changing it anyway. Okay, let's try it again. Sorry about that. I'm going to try. But are you going to try? Great new logo. Who likes the SIGGRAPH logo this year? I think it's pretty nice with the glass. Fantastic. Recent. Can I do recent? Oh. Remember. Okay. This is the part of the job I hate. Crap doesn't work. Hey, look at that. Fantastic. Alright, so I made this little rig. The rig has this little label, constraint here. Okay. So we're just going to find, it's not a big deal. It's not like you're making the contact, 100%, as rigid as it used to be. So, you can just kind of find a key. This is as good as any, really. And we're just going to turn on that constraint. All right. Okay. And now it's moving. Okay. So we set a key. Key that as well. Frame before 0. Okay. So now it's moving. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to take the object and take the object's controller, okay, which is free to move within that object space. And we're just going to key it naturally, bless you. Alright. This little rotation then accounts for the pose change. Right? Don't want it to intersect, so let's have it, let's make it feel like it's tilting a little bit. And kind of rolling into the hand, kind of. Probably going to have to repose the thumb. It's natural to need to kind of like go back a little bit and fix your posing. And you can really do it at any time, so I'm choose to do it now. Let's get the fingers playing here. Actually, middle 2, 3, pinky 2, 3. Actually, they were pretty good before. It's a little weird. rotate. I try to build overlap into or follow through into the pose first time. Well, look at that. I know I'm a dork, but I just think it's so funny. Like, we're gonna get the shot. You know, it's like some crazy director with giant cameras. Like, don't move. I don't know. Those two of them. You know what I mean? Like, how intimidating would this be if you were an actor? You know? Okay. Get the forehead shot. Ooh. No, that's wrong. Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's constrain our timeline. Okay. Much more natural, and we're getting the arc on the hand that we want. We're gonna put the glass down in a second, but let's just really quickly run through what I was talking about with the constraints. Loosen up your constraints. Remember, I was just creating the constraint on a frame, knowing that I'm going to go back and basically account for pose change in the glass with that controller. Okay, so be nice and loose with your constraints. Don't go all nuts on those, and allow for some movement. Constrain your objects either on a group above the controller or another group node, so that you have a little bit of play. I know it's a little bit different in Max, the way it works, but in Maya, the constraints, you're not allowed to adjust the constraint position, just the constraint influence. And then and just don't go crazy with constraints until you're keying straight ahead in the contact. All right, so get that arc that you want, like that hand cruising through and picking up the glass, for instance, and then go back in the straight ahead section and work your constraints. Okay, so let's put the glass back down. Okay, real quick. What time is it? Almost 3. What time do we have still? We started at 2 to 3:30. Yeah, that's right. Okay, cool. All right, we're right on track. No, we're actually a little behind. All right, let me try to describe this a little bit. Actually, no, I'm just going to demo this kind of like with a real glass. That'll save a little bit of time. Okay, so with a real glass, anything tall up here I can put this down on? No. Okay. You all can't see up here though, huh? Anyone have any good ideas? Alright, I'm going to get into construction here. That's not going to do anything. So can you all see this now? So, can you see at least that high? Yeah? Okay. So, the way we would key this, the glass is in his hand. So, really, it's the table that the hand is contacting and the glass is the pose change. Does that make sense? So, we're going to put it down. My hand arc, again, is just going to be a nice arc, as opposed to the normal way of doing it, which is taking it and, pressing it down like that. How many times have you been out with your friends like, yeah, I'm drinking alcohol, I'm cool, and you slide the glass. That would not be possible, with that kind of art. Yeah, guys, let's go, alcohol's awesome, There's that too, but normally it's like upside down, and it's a different kind of like different feeling altogether of emotion. So this is much more natural, where you're going to, well, this is kind of sticky. Okay, well, point is that you're going to move your hand on an arc. That pose change, remember that all that twinning that happens on the pose change of the hand, when you key it like explicitly like that, is so difficult to break up, because then what you start getting to is like, oh man, it's not touching the fingers at the right moment. I'm trying to break up the pose change on the hand, but I keyed the glass so specifically. Now it looks like it should fall out of the hands. Whatever, that's fine if you're keying those arcs and that pose change. Starting your hand, the glass is literally going to fall out when it wants to, but your hand is going to push it, right? Just a tiny bit. and then there's going to be a frame where they're touching, connected, moving together, and then the next frame, there's just not enough force on the hand, but the glass is going to continue just moving just a little bit. If it's one frame, that's fine. So I would key it like this. Key, see how like the hand is beginning to stop holding it. That key where the glass hits, maybe a little bit of pose change. If I'm holding it up here, it might actually move in my hand a little bit. All right, so that's the kind of like the pose change on the part of the table is going to be felt in the glass. And then just move it forward, and then after I let go, it's going to slide forward a little bit. Now this is kind of sticky, but you can tell just by the sound, actually. One little test you can do if you don't believe me that the cup moves after you touch it is take a glass and go out like on the concrete. It's perfect because it's like really, really textured and it'll make a big noise. The table makes a little bit of a noise. Same thing with picking it up. See how fast you can pick something up without making a noise. No. No, slower. Still. I heard it. You probably didn't. There we go. So, at all but that speed I did at the very end, at every single one of those speeds, there is movement. There is that pose change where the glass is still on the ground, sliding and dragging. So, do that. It's a fun little experiment. See how fast you can pick it up. I really wish I could just there was nothing, because you would have blown your minds. It's like one of those things that you can't practice now. Or you can't practice, but it sucks. Okay, so putting it down, this is what we're going to go through. Putting the glass back down, the hand is lighter than the table, so the glass is going to give way in that pose change. Right when the glass touches, it's going to slide. Allow for some wiggle, allow for some play. Don't be looking at your constraints, looking at your pose in your hand, and trying to make it so that you can't fit a molecule between it. It's not the point. And then hold off turning off the constraint until you go straight ahead. There's a specific moment when the hand probably shouldn't be constrained to it, but it's probably a lot later than you would think, right? And I can see how it would be kind of like a little bit of a dilemma for people who taught themselves. I taught myself almost everything that I know, technically on the side of in terms of animation. I taught myself. It was a very long process. It was actually about 5 years of posting and reading this one forum every single day. So I'm aware of a lot of the problems that people run into when they're just trying to intuitively find their way through animation. And the constraint issue, especially on contact, is a toughie, because normally if you are posing it or you are keying it right on the end of that arc that was made for the contact, then it's just so natural. Oh, that's the frame. Then the next frame, the constraint is up. You don't have to think about it. But that's not really the case at all. This section, touch the ground. Okay. So this method frees you up to have intuitive contact. All right, a character doing a simple turn. Definitely don't have time to animate this one. My thought was, just like I was showing in the beginning here, on the walk cycle where we keep on getting that pose with the leg perfectly stretched out in front and the leg coming down and all that stuff. But even I know you guys are constrained a little bit in especially the games world on the cycle side, even explicit animation, one-off scenes and shots, see way too much of a character. Let's say they're going to do a kind of a big anticipated turn. That moment when this foot finally plants, I see way too much posing for that moment of contact. And even though it kind of feels like, well, that's a legit pose because, you know, it's one of the moments of, you know, of the entire movement. Not really. Your arc is on your waist, right? So you should be posing this. I'm not going to move my feet this time. I'm just going to kind of like make up for it with just bending my legs. But you should, you know, pose this, you know, nice on an arc, nice and smooth, nice and organic, whatever. You should be biasing this towards the body motion, not the foot motion. So this, you know, I know you can't see this, but it's like that on the ground. It's like that on the ground. This is not like a legitimate moment where you should be, you know, focusing the attention of the universe on, you know, getting that molecule-wide gap between the foot and the ground, especially not on a pose like this. So what I like to do when I'm keying things like this is to like lift the leg, and on the turn, just have the foot out and kind of like searching for it. And then when I get to this moment right here, I just keyed the pose of the body. And then I go back through and just take my foot keys and my foot position almost as temporary, and then go back through straight ahead and fix the way. Actually, you know, we have time to just look at how that feels. We don't have time to do the whole shot, but we have time to look how that feels. Okay. Don't say. Open. No. Reference. Yes. I'm loving this dialogue now. It's so fast to move around. Okay. Okay. So this is kind of what I'm talking about. So we have this character, and he's about to, you know, turn this way. Oops. Too fast for my own good. Pew, pew, pew. Okay. Come on. There we go. And so what I'm talking about is kind of like I'll place this out here, you know, sort of like reaching and searching for it. Actually, Book has pretty good toe controls, so you can actually pivot and swivel. Ball swivel. But you don't have ball rock. Okay. So I'll kind of intuitively try to find this, right? But I'll consider all this stuff is just garbage. Okay. I'll just consider this really kind of like temporary. Alright? Because really what I'm supposed to be keying is this nice, you know, gradual arc on the waist here. It's not nice or gradual. Okay? So let's see what we can get. Just gotta find the right one. 6 times the charm. There we go. Okay, especially if I anticipate a little bit and lift the foot up. Look, we're animating it. We didn't even think we were going to. Look at that. Okay, so on this, I'll just kind of feel it out. Should have flown these vectors a long time ago. Alright, honestly it's not going. But, why is our key there? Oh. Okay, so then when I'm moving through this, I'm kind of saying to myself, okay, well, where is the contact actually happening? All I care about right now is actually creating a really nice arc on the waist. Alright, so I'm just going to work that. I'm going to work that. That. Get some coffee in here. Coffee, room 511A. Excellent. So This is probably going too fast. Okay, so on this, what I'll just say to myself is, okay, I'm going to now go through this and figure out what's the best moment of contact for this, right? So I keep this straightforward. Probably want to bring it up just a little bit more. Probably want to have a little bit of overlapping action on here, so I'll bring it up as well. And then place it right there. No, that turned out to be way too late. Let's try it like this. We're still maxing out a little bit. And I'm not liking how much it's tilted. How's it doing that? Okay, that looks like a good post change finally. Actually, it looks a little quick at speed, right? So let's retime it. Oops, that was on my own. Yeah, so we're getting there. We're getting there, but the point is that the first thing I did was just so that the knees. I mean, you all laughed when like the knees were like this, and he was moving through because it looks stupid. It's distracting. You key the arc on the body, and then the pose change accounts for the change in arc on this. Imagine, I don't have time to do it, but imagine if I not only was doing this step, but I was also doing like another more complex contact, like on my hand. Like if I threw this and did something like that. What you start to see is that you can get a lot of texture in your body on contact because like for instance, the muscles are going to go all rigid through my arm and my chest, and when I catch this, I'm going to take the weight in my arm, but you can see it kind of pulls my shoulder down a little bit. As much as you want to loosen that up is how much texture you can kind of build into this performance. It can either be really rigid like that, or it can really take the whole body with it. And again, this is as this loops over, I'm bringing my hand up. But this is heavier, basically, so I'm bringing my hand up, and when it comes down, that arc, there's a key here, and there's probably a key here, and it's a brand new arc. So the arc on that looks like this. Here's my hand, coming up to meet it, and then catching it, probably something like that. And then here's the bottom, right? So this little thing, this little moment, even if you don't see this moment, I should probably use a different color and not my finger to erase. Even if you don't see that little moment in there, the point of this whole talk is it's this and really this that the audience, that a viewer will take as a strong contact. It's that weight, it's that change of arcs, etc. Okay, so this is just real quick. The issue of walks and runs. Walking and running have contact at every foot placement. I think you guys know that, but the more cartoony shot is, the less you need to worry about contact. This kind of has a lot to do with my cartoony lecture, which some of you saw last time. And let's see, where is it? Oops. Oops, no, that's cartoon scenes. Here we go. So this is a scene. How I came up with this is a completely different discussion. But the fact that this works with the kind of contact that I'm talking about is all this talk. So this is a shot I animated for Forge. I don't think they're doing that anymore. It's a pity because it was a lot of fun. At any rate, so look, there's that pose, but instead of having, instead of keying this on the frame where it's right up against the ground. Even though I do a lot of stretching in this scene, later. I mean, there's this crazy stretch, in this scene. It's right there, but then it's placed and is already, a little bit of pose change. That one, a little bit more by the book, but look at the next pose of it. It's like almost underneath the body. Instead of straight out, it's more underneath him. And then look what starts happening. Have to telegraph a little bit more pose change. Look how the foot is bent down. It's above, but then it's actually below the ground. And what you'll see is there's a lot of poses that are not kind of like logical next steps from the pose before, especially in the passing pose. Because when you're doing a cartoony kind of scramble, you need to make sure that your passing poses look different enough from each other at speed that they actually work. So anyway, so there you go. So there's just one cartoony run that has that I was just really loose, and whenever the foot contacted, I was kind of like okay with it. And then I know you probably can't get away with this in games, but if you one little trick is to offset the keys just a little bit when your animation is done, and it gives it a little bit more of a natural feeling, so that you're not seeing the exact same pose. But with this, you need to make sure that you're not getting in a little bit of trouble. Like for instance, on King Kong, for instance, we had to scale. Here's the thing with the walks and runs. I actually discovered this almost by accident, because on King Kong, they shot all the plates for the Brontosaurus stampede down that ravine at like 1/6 scale. And the problem was, though, the miniatures, the miniature ravine that they built had, I think it had 3 walls. So they had to fly the motion control camera down the middle of it, and the MoCo camera had this little rig underneath it holding it up. So it could only get about 1.5 feet off the ground. So in our previs, the camera is supposed to be like right along the ground, looking up, and the actors are like this, like, oh no, and the brontosauruses are over them and stampeding and whatever. But because there was that rig underneath the camera, they couldn't get it down to the floor of the miniature. So what ended up happening was, once we went to 1/6 scale, a camera in previs that was supposed to be 3 feet off the ground was now like 10 feet off the ground, because of that scale change. What we ended up having to do is, instead of scaling the scene, we scaled all the characters. When we scaled the characters, their 35 kilometer an hour walk cycle all of a sudden became like 180 kilometers an hour. They were covering way too much distance. So what we did, we scaled down the animation and offset the keys on the brontosauruses. So what was crazy was, the guy who did the base walk, a guy named Dietrich. Fantastic. He had been working on elephants before, so he knew all about how they drag their foot, and elephants kind of just before they press it on the ground, there's kind of their little almost like a wet rope, kind of just like a little flip and whatever. And so we weren't seeing that every single step anymore, because even though that's correct, that's how they do it. Before we scaled the entire character and the walk and whatever, every single step you'd see the exact same pose. So when this happened, I started looking at all the animation, and it all just felt a little bit more natural. So I discovered this by accident, but if you can at least customize a little bit, if you're working with cycles and you can bake them in, and then just offset and play with them just a little bit, so you're not seeing the exact same pose on every single iteration of that cycle, it does actually make it feel a little bit more natural. So that's just That's just a little tip that I sort of happened upon. Kind of lucky. So let's wrap up real quick. I'm supposed to let you guys ask questions for a few minutes. Most common mistake, obviously, is posing the contact as if it's a moment. You're introducing a keyframe. Normally, if you guys work with step keys or copy pairs, you're introducing like a full body keyframe on the moment of contact when it's not a moment. It shouldn't be an event that you're keying explicitly. Okay? That introduces speed problems, twinning problems, and what's the third problem? Anyone remember? Arcs. Very good. See me after the lecture. I actually do have a prize for you. And then the solution, of course, is to just go pose to pose. Really honor your arcs. Really honor the fluidity of the motion you're going for, and let the interruption of that be the guide that telegraphs to the audience that a contact has happened. Arcs are essentially important. With constraints, we're being looser with contact, so you need to be looser with constraints, of course. Okay? Pose changes occur in the objects. Remember, in composition, they can kind of account for a little bit of the arc change, the change of arc on the object. So, hand moving forward and fingers moving backwards, you're kind of getting like zero net effect with a motion like this. So be aware of your composition with arcs as well. And what that also means is that if you're losing everything in foreshortening, so the camera's right in front and you're hitting someone on the head like this, well, there's really, really no arc to camera, right? There's the very little net change to camera if your hand like slows down from this moment. So, just be aware of composition. If you can, open it up to camera, stuff like that. So that really only affects pose changes. And then we talked a little bit about walks and runs. And if you can, offset the keys just a little bit, just to make it feel a little bit more natural, and so that you're not, kind of like looping something in front of the audience. And so with all that we talked about, I guess there is just one more thing to add to that, which is don't forget good contact. There you go. So that's the end. By the way, if you want to follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, I'm just Kenny Roy. I do frequently give out work because I have some clients coming to me with like quick turn projects and stuff like that. So best way to get some freelance work, and we don't care if you're in Montreal or whatever, we'll just like PayPal you or whatever, is to follow me on one of these things, and I'll give it up. But that's it. Thank you. So does anyone have any questions? Getting very excited to move on to secondary. Yes?
So it would also apply to push-off positions as well. You wouldn't always have your toe exactly on the ground, stretched out every time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like an Olympic runner. Like starting at the starting blocks, right? Their first couple, steps, that contact, is extremely forceful, extremely, quick, and that push off, like if you're going to like make that toe perfectly pointed, exactly, coming off, you're going to lose a lot of that force if you're doing a shot like that or something like that. Exactly. Very good. Anyone else? Excellent. That's good because I need a little break. I need a little bit more water. Was there any more questions? Right before I go? Yes, Mark.
Might sound funny, but I'd like to know what you mean exactly when you're talking about twinning. It doesn't seem to be the same thing as I think.
Oh, yeah, twinning doesn't just necessarily mean like, both sides of the body looking perfectly. a lot of student work I see is started with a very pose approach using either copy pairs, which are spline keyframes, or step keyframes. And what that means is that you might, for instance, you might put this down, and on the exact same frame that the constraint turns off, this hand starts going, the finger pose starts changing, the head starts turning, there's a blink, so it's kind of like, like the whole like universe explodes like right on that moment, because it's like an artifact of keying this contact as like this huge event that calls for a full body keyframe. My advice is no. Like, you can have a keyframe, forget the model, have a keyframe right here, put it down, go back, kind of kill them all like God sorted out kind of, attitude, where you're going to change the arcs instead of making the arcs for the contact. Does that make sense? So twinning is everything. Twinning can be, there's twinning in, timing of like a single action, but there's also something that I call patterns when, and it's really bad for animators to fall into patterns, which is you get something that works and then you key everything like that. So like you have like your 2-frame anticipation and your 8-frame movement and your 4-frame overshoot and then your 6-frame settle, and then your 2-frame anticipation and your 8-frame movement and your 4-frame overshoot and your 8-frame settle, and then your 2-frame anticipation and your 8-frame movement and your 4, you know what I'm saying? So everything just starts feeling like, like through all your shots. So that's twinning as well. It's not like at the same moment, but it's like twinned approaches to timing. So you want to avoid that as well. So, yeah, that's twinning. Okay, why don't you all take a break and come back for the second lecture.